Welcome to another episode of Extreme Expat Stories of Thailand. Dear friend, I'm writing this email because I need someone to hear the truth about what happened to me. I'm a pretty normal guy, not the sort who usually falls for over the top expat horror stories. In fact, until recently, I thought most of them were exaggerated or made up. Who could really live through that kind of nightmare? I used to ask myself. But I'm eating crow now. Something completely unbelievable happened to me in Thailand, and I have to tell someone. I'm not looking for pity or sympathy. I'm just hoping that if even one person reads this and thinks twice, maybe they'll be stay. Life back home was going nowhere. I had a small apartment cluttered with bills I couldn't pay. I did a job at a law office that I hated, and nothing but a lonely cat to keep me company. When my girlfriend of 5 years dumped me out of the blue, it felt like the final straw. I felt trapped. So, one late night, after a few too many beers with a buddy, I did something crazy. I sold almost everything I owned and booked a one way ticket to Thailand. No real plan, just a gut feeling that I needed to get out and change my life. I told myself that in a couple of weeks I'd have some great story to tell. I never imagined how true that would become. Flying out, I felt equal parts terrified and alive. Sitting in that plane as it roared down the runway, I watched my old life fade away in the window. I had my backpack and a few $100. As far as I was concerned, I had nothing left to lose. Arriving in Thailand was like stepping into a different world. Bangkok at night hit me with humid air, flashing neon signs, and the chatter of a foreign language all over. Tuk-tuks zipping by, hawkers selling fruit juice on street corners, chatter of Falang mixing with Thai. It was sensory overload. I grabbed a taxi to a budget hostel in the heart of the city, my heart pounding with excitement. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the adventure I needed. The first week was a dream. Everything was so cheap. I felt like a king with my limited funds. Dorm beds were $5 a night. I explored golden temples by day and street markets by night. I ate mango sticky rice with coconuts for lunch and sampled spicy curries that set my mouth on fire. On most nights, I'd hit up cheap bars and clubs with fellow travelers. The streets of Bangkok buzzed past in neon lights and thumping music. I even tried taking Muay Thai boxing lessons at a local gym, punching pads under a sweaty tin roof just to say I did. I was making friends everywhere. I met other backpackers from England, Australia, and Germany. There was that one Scottish guy who lived in Bangkok for years. He warned me, laughing, Farang, watch out for strange drinks here, yeah? I nodded and joked that I was too small to fall for anything. I was young, I was invincible, or so I thought. I tried to do everything I'd heard about. I learned a few basic Thai phrases. I gave coins at a temple and bowed with my head to the ground, trying to show respect to the little Buddhas. One day I hired a tuk-tuk to take me out to some jungle festival just to see what it was like at night. I ended up dancing barefoot in the mud under the paper lanterns for hours. I felt like I was embracing Thailand, just like those travel channels said, and I loved every second of it. About the third week, though, things started to turn. Two Thai guys at my hostel, friendly enough, speaking decent English, asked me to join them at a weekend house party on the edge of the city. I was enjoying myself, so I shrugged and went. At first, it was no big deal. An open air patio with speakers, beer bottles on plastic tables, Thai pop music blasting. We danced, told bad jokes, and I ate some pad thai they offered. But as midnight passed, one of those guys handed me a plastic cup of some dark herbal tea. He said it was special tea from the north. Thinking nothing of it, I gulped it down. It tasted bitter, like a strong grass tea. Within minutes, I realized something was terribly wrong. Colors began to spiral. The music turned into a low, pulsating thud. My legs gave out. I remember trying to reach out, but only knocking over a chair. The next thing I knew, my vision tunneled and everything went black. I woke up to harsh fluorescent light. My head pounded like I'd been hit with a hammer. I was naked on a wooden floor with my hands pinned under a massive palm tree poster. I looked up and saw two Thai police officers standing over me. My wrists were already in handcuffs. One of them pointed at me aggressively and barked an order in Thai I didn't understand. Panic exploded in my chest. Oh God, did they really just arrest me? I couldn't figure out why. A wave of memory washed over me. The party, the tea, the music blurring, and me going down. I tried to mouth, I drank something, I'm not a criminal. But I couldn't form the words. The officers exchanged a look, and one of them unceremoniously slapped a ball and chain device around each ankle. Pain shot through me. I couldn't lift my feet. A cold sweat broke out on my skin. They led me out, still shackled at my hands. My heart was racing so fast I couldn't think straight. We walked down a narrow corridor, and then they shoved me into a small holding cell. The steel door slammed behind me. The smell was indescribable. A mix of rot, sweat, urine, and unwashed bodies. I choked on it and had to crouch down. Around me were about a dozen men, local Thais in prison garb, and a few disoriented tourists and expats like me. Some murmured my name in confusion. Others just glared. A Vietnamese backpacker next to me whispered quietly, "Farang, you okay?" I barely nodded. My head was spinning. The reality was crashing in. I was locked in some Thai jail cell for reasons I didn't even understand. Not long after, two men in uniforms called out the others in the cell by name. We filed out one by one into another room. This was supposedly a courtroom. I realized with an interpreter and a grim-looking Thai judge at the front behind a low bench. The interpreter read my name out loud and started rattling off charges in English. Possession of narcotics, intent to distribute. You are charged. My stomach dropped. I stuttered. Wait, I didn't. But the interpreter just stared blankly and said, "Sign here." They had a document in front of me, in Thai script. They said I had to sign it. If I signed, I'd be admitting guilt. I didn't dare. I kept my mouth shut. The judge glared at me and loudly said something in Thai, and the interpreter translated with contempt. He had no lawyer, no translator. If he does not sign, he will stay in jail. My heart felt like ice. I had no money, no lawyer, and no clue what to do. Finally, a guard grabbed my shoulder and ushered me out. No bail, no release. That afternoon, after the brief hearing, I was thrown into the back of a rusty prison van with several other men. My hands and feet were still cuffed. We drove all day through highways and country roads. The van was packed tight. I could barely turn my head. Through the barred windows, I saw roadside stands selling grilled fish, villages with thatched roofs, and endless green fields. Sunshine faded to dusk. At one stop, I was handed some stale bread and a thermos of lukewarm water, and one of the Thai guys there whispered in pity, "Take it, eat." My head was throbbing too badly to even thank him. By nightfall, we arrived at a large fortified prison in the south. High walls topped with razor wire loomed over us. A guard barked orders, and I was pushed out onto a hard stone courtyard with dozens of other shackled prisoners lined up in the dark. The air was cooler here, but it smelled of sweat and sour noodles. Another officer in plain clothes came by with forms. He didn't ask questions. He just snapped an ID card reading John Doe, UK, and tossed it on the ground for me. Then they marched me inside through a heavy steel gate. I was terrified. Lights blazed overhead. Guards in black tactical uniforms stood on elevated walkways, rifles slung, watching. One kicked me forward, down a hallway, and shoved me into a holding area. I felt a final shove, and they forced me to strip naked right there in the light. It was humiliating, degrading beyond words. They searched me, back pockets, under fingernails, and even inside shoes. When I stood up, all I had left were the hospital scrub style orange shirt and rough cotton shorts they handed me. No underwear. They fastened a heavy metal brace around each ankle. The guards laughed quietly at the new farang, as if this was all routine comedy to them. Then, without a word, they yanked my cuffs off my wrists and shoved me through a steel door into a cell that was unlike anything I'd ever imagined. The cell I entered was huge, but it was filled with people. The doorway was a thin metal opening. Behind me, the guards slammed it shut with a boom. I stumbled inside. In the flickering yellow light, I counted nearly 50 men crammed inside. At first, I thought it was meant for 20, maybe 30, but it was packed far beyond capacity. They lined us all on the floor, shoulder to shoulder, feet touching feet in chaotic rows. It was beyond anything I could have prepared for. The air was thick, stale, suffocating. A rank stench of sweat, mildew, and old diarrhea assaulted me. The cement floor was stained dark in spots. Threadbare mats and the last clean mat I saw were rotten, with crusty stains. I pressed myself flat, hands around my face to hold back the vomit reflex. Cockroaches and albino rats scuttled across my arms and legs immediately. I felt something wet on my calf, a rat running underneath, staring up at me. The lights never turned off. There was no night here, only endless, oppressive daylight. I realized I couldn't tell hours apart. Some prisoners said they never saw darkness for the first 3 weeks. It was constant glare. Everyone stared at me. I was the new farang, and I could feel eyes burning onto my back. I kept my face down to avoid the gaze. Some of the Thai inmates whispered among themselves. One muttered the word farang to another. I felt naked even with clothes on, surrounded by hardened criminals who'd been here for years. We had one meal a day. That evening they slid a metal tray under our bars. On mine was a scoop of soggy rice and a thin brown chicken broth with a few shredded carrot bits floating. A tiny fish lay on top, its eye staring vacantly. Hunger overrode disgust, so I ate it all. I saw another prisoner unwrap a small chicken head with eyes still intact and wincing, gnaw on the neck for nutrients. I remember swallowing each spoonful thinking, this is what it's come to. Drinking water was an ordeal. Twice a day, a guard would slip a hose and flood the sloped concrete floor of the yard outside our cell. We all scrambled. Men pushed and shoved to get their steel cups under the spray. I often got half a squirt of grayish water on my face. Once, desperate, I caught a gust of hose spray into my mouth, only to realize it was more mud than water. On the third morning, I fainted from thirst while I was still in line. They didn't stop the hose. I woke on the ground to men pushing me aside. Every afternoon, if we weren't in the yard, we just sat or lay around in that cell, The guards sometimes let us lie on the concrete with one arm peeking out to ward off kidnappers, they said mockingly. By midday, I had to sit in the sun anyway. That was part of roll call and inspection. We often sat in the blazing heat doing nothing, under the same cell lights. Sleep was nearly impossible. We had no beds, just our thin mats. I went days with maybe 2 hours of fitful sleep. My back and leg muscles ached constantly from lying on concrete. I started getting bug bites and scabs all over. There were rats everywhere. One night I woke up to find one nibbling on the edge of my mat. I screamed. A guard poked his head in and said, "Shh," and wandered off, laughing. Violence was normal. I saw it first within hours. 2 inmates tried to steal a chunk of my bread ration, so they punched each other bloody. Guards didn't care. They simply marched them to solitary. One afternoon, 2 huge Thai men in the row in front of me got into a fight. They started punching and kicking like wild animals. Full-on slugfest. One screamed at the other in Thai, something that ended in a snarl, and they immediately began slashing each other with rusty pocket knives. Screams filled the cell as men jumped up and tried to pull them apart. I pressed into a corner and covered my head. Blood flew everywhere. I felt a splash across my face and realized it was from one of them. By the time guards came in, one man lay on the floor, barely breathing. They dragged both of them out, screaming in silence, and then slammed the cell door. Everyone was shaken. I learned quickly, if you fought, no one would help you. It was every man for himself. I tried to keep to myself. An older inmate named Somchai ended up in our corner of the cell. He was a bulky guy, mid-40s, with a shaved head and deep brown eyes. In broken English, he introduced himself when he saw me trembling. He gave me a cigarette one night. It wasn't much, but it was something. From him, I learned the most important rule: eat, drink, bow, which means you do what you have to for food and water, and bow your head 3 times if a guard looks at you, no matter what. It sounded crazy, but I followed his advice religiously after that. It helped us survive. Sleep, when it came, was always interrupted. I kept dreaming of home. One time I had a dream I was hiking with my sister on a forest trail. I even shouted water in the dream and woke up to the gutter of that dark concrete corridor gushing cold tap water. I clutched a pebble from my pocket, my tiny good luck charm, under my pillow every night. I whispered prayers to every god I could remember. One afternoon near the end of my first week, they cleared the cell and marched us out for inspection. A guard shouted, "2 more," and forced a new prisoner in with us. I could tell he was scared. His eyes were wide, and he was shivering. He didn't say a word, just huddled on his mat. At the very end of the row, a boy, maybe 19, huddled. He started sobbing quietly. A guard came, booted him in the ribs for making noise, then said, "No crying. Die inside." The boy flinched and went silent. I heard him whisper under his breath to himself, "Mother, help me," and I felt totally helpless. I prayed it wouldn't be me weeping next. By the 3rd week, hunger and dehydration had thinned me out completely. I knew I couldn't last here much longer. One evening, something unexpected happened. The prison block suddenly went dark. A thunderstorm rolled in and the power cut off. For the first time, there was darkness in the cell, save for lightning flashes. In that silence, I heard Somchai whisper, "Wake!" The cell was in chaos. Guards shouting, prisoners singing, banging on walls. Somchai shook his shirt and pointed to the keys he had filched from a guard's belt during the commotion. My heart leaped. He knelt and unlocked my leg shackles. Metal clinked on concrete. I could stand. Somchai unlocked his too. We didn't hesitate. Screams and gunshots rang out in the courtyard. A full riot had broken out. We dashed out of the cell door together into a dark hallway. Flashlights swept overhead and we were frozen in their beams for a second. But the guards outside were busy with mobs. We ducked into a broom closet and held our breath. Then, bare of shoes, we slipped into the yard. Rain was pouring by now. We sprinted across open ground. We climbed up a maintenance ladder near the dining hall and slid over the wall. The razor wire above it was spiked, but we took it slow. I caught my arm on the wire, searing pain from a long cut. But we pulled ourselves over, legs first, and fell into the jungle beyond. Adrenaline was pumping so hard, I barely felt the cuts until much later. We ran into the night, rain-drenched jungle. There was no light except the dying storm. We didn't stop. We had no gear. Our orange shirts were soaked to the skin. Leaves and mud soaked us, and the creeks were swollen. Somchai had some ripped cargo shorts and an old map he'd saved. For 3 days and nights we fled deeper and deeper south. We ate wild fruit, starved when there wasn't enough. Once a terrifying pack of wild dogs chased us through a clearing. We climbed a tree and stayed perched until they moved on. Once thunder rumbled. Something enormous like a python uncurled near our camp. We froze until it slithered away. Finally, on the 4th day, we made it to a small river that marked the border with Malaysia. We waded across just at nightfall, our legs nearly cramping, hearts pounding. When we emerged on the other side, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. We limped into a tiny Malaysian village at dawn, clutching to each other. We looked like ghosts, cuts on our arms and legs, our skin caked in dirt and blood, eyes wide with relief and fear. One kindly old Malaysian lady took us to her home without asking questions. They gave us warm rice porridge and clean water. As I ate that first hot meal in days, I cried. We were alive. The local doctor was summoned. He stitched up the long cut on my arm from the razor wire and set some broken toenails. I could barely move, but I was grateful. He told me quietly I'd been very lucky with infections and he gave me some antibiotics. I took them, too tired to even protest. The rest of the escape was anticlimactic. Somchai arranged fake Malaysian papers for both of us. I won't lie, he was British with contacts back home. I just followed along. We bought cheap clothes to look less conspicuous and reached Kuala Lumpur after another day's bus travel. There, I called a family friend in a whisper. The next day I was on a plane back to London, not via Bangkok. I had to avoid Thailand. When I finally walked out of the plane gate into British soil, I felt numb and unbelievably grateful. I am safe now. I'm writing this from my parents' home, sitting by my mother's old radio that still plays BBC. It's hard to believe any of this happened to me. I look at my scars every day now. That long red slash across my arm, the missing toenail, the tremble in my left hand. I wake up from nightmares remembering the fluorescent lights and concrete floors. At first, being home felt like waking up from a nightmare. I'd sit by the kitchen window and watch rain trickle down the glass, telling myself that each drop was washing the memories away. My mother kept saying I should be grateful to be alive, and I was, but the relief never really came. I couldn't sleep more than an hour at a time. Loud noises made me jump. The smell of rice cooking made my stomach twist. I thought that with time I'd adjust, but instead something stranger began to happen. About 3 weeks after I got back, I received a plain brown envelope in the mail. No return address, no markings, just my name printed in block letters. Inside were 4 photographs, glossy and slightly curled at the edges. The first one was of me sitting at a street-side bar in Bangkok, laughing with the 2 Thai guys who'd invited me to that fateful party. The second showed me slumped over a table, probably after I drank the tea. The third was inside the cell. I recognized the stained concrete wall and the rust-colored mat I'd slept on. In that photo, I was lying down, eyes half open, looking directly at the camera. The fourth photo was the worst. A blurry shot of my mother's house, the same window where I was sitting right then, staring out at the rain. I dropped the envelope. My first thought was that someone had followed me home. My second was that whoever had sent it wanted me to know they could still reach me. I showed the photos to the local police, but they shrugged it off. Could be a prank, one officer said, or someone from immigration checking up. But when I asked how they'd get a photo of my mother's house, he had no answer. I stopped sleeping by that window after that. Not long after, I started getting calls from an unlisted number. No one ever spoke, just a long, steady silence, sometimes punctuated by a faint scraping sound, like metal on concrete. Once, I thought I heard someone whisper my name. When I tried calling back, it was always disconnected. I changed SIM cards twice. It didn't help. One night, around 2 a.m., I heard footsteps in the driveway, not the heavy steps of my father or brother or sister. These were soft, deliberate, almost testing. I turned off the lamp and peered through the blinds. The streetlight caught a glimpse of a man standing by the mailbox, looking up at the house. He was wearing a thin black jacket, hood pulled low, face in shadow. He stood there for a good 30 seconds before slowly walking away. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I found something else in the mailbox. A small paper tag with Thai writing scrawled on it, and a coin taped to the corner. I showed it to a friend who'd lived in Chiang Mai for years. He went pale when he saw it. "That's not good," he said quietly. "It's something they use to mark a debt, a warning sometimes." He told me to burn it and not keep it in the house. I did, but the smell of burning paper and metal made me nauseous. It reminded me of the chemical tang of the prison courtyard. After that, I started noticing other small things. My email was accessed from an IP address traced to Southeast Asia, Bangkok to be exact. Someone had tried to reset my passwords. I called the embassy hotline. They said to stay alert and avoid sharing details of my location online. I deleted my social media completely that night. I even considered changing my name again. I know how paranoid this sounds. Maybe I'm seeing ghosts that aren't there. Maybe the man at the mailbox was just a passerby and the photos were some sick coincidence. But deep down, I don't believe that. There are too many details that line up. Too many reminders that what happened in Thailand didn't stay there. I come to realize that escape isn't always about distance. Sometimes the past just keeps walking behind you. Lately, I've been thinking about Somchai, the man who helped me escape. I tried to find him through contacts online, but no one's heard of him. A friend in Malaysia told me that a body washed up near the border a month after my escape, unidentified, wearing a torn orange shirt. I don't know if that was him, but I can't stop imagining it. If it was, then maybe the people we ran from finally caught up with him. I still wake up at night thinking about the envelope, the camera in the cell, and the hooded figure in the street. I want to believe it's over, but every time I close my eyes, I hear that whisper again, the one I thought was just in my head. Farang, we remember you. If you share this story, please keep it raw. Realize it's not an urban legend or a made-up story. The smiles and beers and adventures we all chased in Thailand can hide madness. A friendly cup of tea can be a weapon. A dirty alleyway can be a death trap. Even the men in uniform can be monsters. I've written this under a new name and changed details to stay safe. But every word, every terrified heartbeat I had in that prison, it's the truth. And if even one person hears this and thinks twice before trusting a stranger or drinking a strange cocktail, I'll be relieved. I survived, but I wouldn't wish that hell on anyone. Thank you for listening and believing me.